People who pass by my old house never notice it anymore. Time has a way of making even the strangest things disappear into the background. But in the far corner of what used to be my childhood yard, under the shadow of a bent dogwood tree, there still stands a wooden cross. No name, no dates, just rough wood darkened by rain and sun. For more than 60 years, folks believed it marked the grave of an animal, a dog maybe, or some forgotten thing no one cared to remember. They were wrong. That cross belongs to a woman whose life began surrounded by comfort and fine manners, but ended in silence, poverty, and sacrifice. A woman who chose to lose everything so that her child could live. My name is Sadie. I am 78 years old now, and I have carried this story longer than I have carried my own name. Today, I am finally letting it breathe. Before I go on, let me ask you something. Where are you listening from? And be honest with yourself. How far would you go to protect your child? Some choices don't come with clean hands. Some love demands blood, silence, and the kind of courage no one applauds. When I close my eyes, I am a little girl again, barefoot on dirt that never quite warmed, even in summer. I can still smell the leather clinging to my father's hands, thick and bitter, no matter how many times he scrubbed them in the creek. I can still taste my mother's cornbread, plain, heavy, but made with care and sold piece by piece at the market to keep us alive. We lived in a fragile wooden cabin tucked deep in the Missouri backwoods. The walls were thin, cracked like old skin, letting the wind slip through in winter and the rain sneak in during storms. At night, the hoot of owls and the sigh of dry leaves were the only sounds that kept us company. My father, Jesse, was a harness maker, a quiet man. His words were few, but his hands never rested. Calloused, scarred, always busy stitching and repairing leather for ranchers who paid little and demanded much. My mother, Sarah, was his opposite. She laughed loudly, sang while washing clothes for others, and believed, with a faith that bordered on stubbornness, that kindness was never wasted. Her hands were always swollen and red, but she never complained. Work keeps the soul honest, she used to say. We had almost nothing. 3 rooms, dirt floors, a quilt sewn from scraps that I slept under on the ground. But my mother believed love could stretch a meal and warmth could be shared, even when there was barely enough to go around. I was small and thin, my hair braided tight each morning. I fetched water, fed our scrawny chickens, and learned early that silence was sometimes safer than questions. And then came the night when everything changed. It was winter, the kind that presses against your chest and makes the dark arrive too early. The sky was heavy, the wind sharp. We were eating quietly when the knock came. 3 hard knocks, urgent, wrong, the kind of knock that doesn't ask for permission, it demands it. And with that sound, a stranger stepped into our lives, carrying a secret so heavy it would bend every soul under our roof. My father froze with his spoon halfway to his mouth. My mother's laughter died instantly, like a candle pinched between fingers. We all stared at the door as if it might burst open on its own. Another knock followed, harder this time. In those days, no one knocked after dark unless trouble had lost its way. "Don't open it," my father said low, his voice sharp as a blade. Could be thieves, or worse. But my mother was already standing. She wiped her hands on her apron, pulled her shawl tight around her shoulders, and moved toward the door with a calm that didn't match the moment. I remember my heart pounding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. When she opened the door, the wind rushed in like something alive, nearly blowing out the kerosene lamp. Rain poured sideways, cold and merciless, and there she stood. A young woman, soaked through, hair plastered to her face, lips trembling from cold. Her dress was torn at the hem, her feet bare and caked with mud. But what caught my breath, what scared me most, was her belly, huge, heavy, pulled tight beneath thin fabric as if it might split her in two. She clutched herself and leaned against the doorframe, breathing like each breath cost her something precious. "Please," she whispered. Her voice was barely there. "Just until the storm passes. I can't go any farther." My father shoved his chair back so hard it scraped the floor. "Sarah, don't you dare. That woman will bring danger into this house." But my mother didn't turn around. She reached out, gripped the stranger's wrist, and pulled her inside with a strength I didn't know she had. "In this house," my mother said slowly, closing the door against the storm, "no one dies in the cold." The stranger nearly collapsed. My mother guided her to the wall, easing her down while thunder shook the cabin. Water pooled on the floor beneath her clothes. My father stood stiff, fists clenched, jaw tight. He didn't say another word, but the anger was clear. Still, he knew better than to argue when my mother spoke like that. The woman lifted her head then, and I saw her face properly. She was young, beautiful even in pain. Big, dark eyes filled with fear. Real fear, the kind that comes from running too long and looking back too often. "My name is Emily," she said softly. "I won't be trouble, I swear." "Emily who?" my father asked. She looked down, said nothing. That silence told me more than words ever could. My mother wrapped her in our spare quilt, the only one we had, and sat her near the stove. She warmed water, dried her hair, moved with the careful tenderness of someone who had known suffering herself. "You'll sleep here tonight. Tomorrow will sort itself out," my mother said tiredly. "We can't feed another mouth, let alone two. If it were our daughter out there, wouldn't you pray someone open their door?" That was when my father grabbed his hat and stepped back into the rain, choosing the shed over the fight he knew he'd already lost. Emily drank warm tea with shaking hands. Tears slid down her face, dropping into the cup. "You're an angel," she whispered. My mother smiled tiredly and brushed the girl's wet hair back. "No," she said, "just a mother." I watched Emily curl near the stove, her body trembling beneath the quilt. I didn't know then that she wasn't just seeking shelter from the storm outside. She was running from something far darker. And that night, as the wind howled and the rain beat against our walls, fate quietly crossed our threshold and refused to leave. When morning finally came, the storm had passed, but the air still felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. I woke to the crackle of firewood and the smell of grease warming in the pan. My bones were stiff from the cold floor, and I pulled on my faded dress before stepping into the kitchen. Emily was already awake. She sat on a small stool near the stove, wrapped tightly in the quilt, her face pale and drawn. The great curve of her belly pulled her forward, and every breath looked like work. My mother moved quietly around her, careful, gentle, as if sudden motion might shatter something fragile. "Come eat, Sadie," Mama said softly, setting food on the table. Emily lifted her eyes when she heard my name. They were red and swollen, like she'd cried most of the night. Still, she tried to smile. "That's a pretty name," she said. "I had a sister named Sadie once." The way her voice cracked made my chest ache, even though I didn't understand why. My mother placed a plate in front of me, cornbread, bacon, and watered milk. Then she fixed a fuller plate and carried it to Emily. "You need strength," Mama said. "Both of you." Emily stared at the food like it was something holy. Her hands shook as she picked up the fork, and suddenly she was crying again, quietly this time, like she didn't want to burden anyone with the sound. "You don't even know me, and you give me your food." Mama knelt in front of her, holding Emily's face between her rough, work-worn hands. "Everyone deserves kindness," she said, "especially when they've got nowhere else to go." That was when my father came in through the back door. He looked like he hadn't slept. His hair was a mess, his shirt wrinkled, eyes red from exhaustion. He took one look at Emily, then sat down without a word and started eating. The silence between them was thick. After a moment, my father spoke. "How long do you plan on staying?" Emily flinched. "Only until I can walk without pain, sir. I don't want to be a burden." "She's not going anywhere," Mama snapped, turning from the stove. "That baby could come any day." My father slammed his fork down. "We can barely survive as it is." "We always survive, because we do what's right." Emily dropped her fork. It clattered to the floor, and she tried to bend down, but her belly stopped her. I jumped up and picked it up before she tried again. "Thank you," she whispered, resting her hand on my head. My father stood abruptly, grabbed his hat, and walked back out to the shed. The sound of hammering followed soon after. Hard, angry strikes. The rest of the day passed slowly. Mama washed clothes, I swept the yard, Emily sat beneath the oak tree, staring into the distance like she was watching ghosts move through the hills. That was when I noticed things that didn't fit. Her hands were delicate, clean, nothing like my mother's or mine. A thick gold ring rested on her finger, catching the sunlight. Her torn dress, though dirty, was made from fine fabric. And the way she spoke, clear, careful, wasn't the way backwoods folk talked. "Mama," I whispered when wringing out sheets, "she ain't poor like us, is she?" Mama nodded slowly. "No, she's not." "Then why is she here?" Mama stopped scrubbing. She looked at me seriously and said, "Because something terrible chased her here." That afternoon, Emily's breathing changed. She gripped her belly, sweat beaded on her forehead. "It hurts," she gasped. I think the baby's coming." Mama didn't panic. She gave orders like a soldier. "Sadie," she said firmly, "run and fetch Miss Dorothy. Run like your life depends on it." I took off barefoot down the dirt road, heart pounding, knowing that whatever was about to happen would change us forever. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like they might give out. The dirt road blurred beneath my feet, stones cutting into my soles, but I didn't slow down. Miss Dorothy lived nearly a mile away, and every step felt like the longest one of my life. When she opened her door and saw my face, she didn't ask questions. She grabbed her bag, threw on her coat, and followed me back without a word. By the time we returned, the cabin felt different, tense, heavy, alive with fear. Emily's cries cut through the air, sharp and desperate. My mother had rolled up her sleeves, her face calm but pale, like she'd already stepped into a battle she refused to lose. "Boil more water," Mama ordered, "and keep that fire strong." My father stood near the wall, useless and shaken. He'd never been good with blood or pain. Still, he stayed. Emily screamed as another pain tore through her. "I can't do this," she sobbed. "Please, make it stop." Mama leaned close, gripping her hand. "You can. You must. That child needs you." Miss Dorothy arrived just in time. She took one look at Emily and nodded. "This baby won't wait." The hours that followed felt endless. Time stretched, twisted, disappeared. I sat in the corner, clutching my knees, watching my mother move with purpose, wiping sweat, whispering encouragement, never once losing her steady rhythm. Emily cried out names I didn't recognize. Sometimes she begged forgiveness. Sometimes she screamed in anger. I didn't understand it then, but now I know. She was fighting more than pain. She was fighting her past. And then, at last, a sound pierced the cabin. A baby's cry. Thin at first, then strong. Miss Dorothy lifted the child, slick and red and screaming, and wrapped him in a cloth. "It's a boy," she said, smiling through tears. Emily sobbed with relief. Mama placed the baby on her chest, and the moment they touched, something softened in Emily's face. She laughed through tears, brushing her fingers across his tiny cheek. "My little James, you're safe now." For a few moments, the world felt peaceful. Even my father relaxed, leaning against the wall, breathing slow. But peace never stays long when secrets are nearby. Emily's smile faded. She stared at her son like she was memorizing him. Every detail, every breath. Her hands trembled. "Mama," she said quietly, turning to my mother, "I need to tell you something." My mother nodded. "When you're ready." Emily swallowed hard. "They're looking for me." My father straightened immediately. "Who?" "People with money, power, influence." She looked down at the baby. "This child, he doesn't belong to me the way you think." The room went silent. "My husband is dead, killed when he found out the truth. This baby is proof of a scandal that could ruin a powerful family." My father cursed under his breath. "You brought trouble to our door." "I didn't mean to," cried Emily. "But if they find me, they'll take him, or worse." Mama didn't raise her voice. She simply asked, "What are you asking of us?" Emily looked at her, eyes full of terror and hope. "Help me hide him," she whispered, "even if it costs you everything." I saw my mother's face change then, not with fear, but with resolve. Some choices don't come with time to think, and my mother was already choosing.
Like a grandma. The room felt smaller after Emily spoke, like the walls had leaned in to listen. The baby whimpered softly, unaware of the weight his first breath had placed on all of us. My father paced the floor, hands pulling at his hair. "You don't understand what you're asking," he said. "People with power don't just knock once. They come back. They come armed." Emily clutched her son tighter. "I know," she said. "That's why I ran until my body broke." Mama stood still for a long moment. She looked at the child, then at Emily, then finally at my father. "Jesse," she said quietly, "step outside with me." They left the cabin, their voices low but urgent. I stayed behind, sitting beside Emily. Her face was drained of color, but her eyes never left her baby. "What will happen to him?" I asked softly. Emily looked at me, really looked at me, like she was seeing the future through my eyes. "If he stays with me," she said, "he won't live free. He'll grow up owned by secrets." The door creaked open, and my parents returned. My father's shoulders were slumped, his eyes were wet. Mama spoke first. "We'll help you." Emily broke down, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. She tried to kiss my mother's hands, but Mama stopped her. "This doesn't make us saints, it makes us responsible." They talked long into the night, low voices, careful words, plans built from scraps of hope and fear. Emily explained everything then. She came from a wealthy household. The child's father was a married man, respected, influential, dangerous. When Emily refused to give the baby up quietly, threats followed, then violence. She fled before the truth could bury her alive. They won't stop, not until the child disappears. Mama stared into the fire. Then we make him disappear. Those words should have scared me. Instead, they felt steady. Before dawn, a decision was sealed. Emily would leave. The baby would stay. I remember the moment she handed him to my mother. Her arms hesitated, trembling, like her body refused to obey her heart. She kissed his forehead again and again, breathing him in like air she might never taste again. "Tell him," she whispered, tears soaking Mama's sleeve. Tell him I loved him enough to let him go. Mama nodded. I swear it. They wrapped the baby in plain cloth, no fine blankets, no proof of where he came from, just warmth and breath and life. My father stepped outside and dug near the old dogwood tree, not deep enough for a body, but deep enough for a lie. By sunrise, a small wooden cross stood in the dirt. This marks the grave of a stillborn, my father said quietly, if anyone asks. I watched Emily stand at the edge of the road, thin and shaken, her body still aching from birth. She looked back once, just once, then she walked away. We named the baby Samuel, and from that day forward, my mother carried 2 children, one in her arms and one in her conscience. None of us knew then that the lie we buried beneath that cross would grow heavier with every passing year, or that love, once chosen, never truly lets you go.
Life has a way of settling back into routine, even after something world-shaking happens. Within weeks, the cries of a newborn replaced the echoes of that stormy night, and our little cabin adjusted itself around Samuel as if he'd always been meant to be there. To the outside world, he was my baby brother. To us, he was a promise. Mama raised Samuel with a quiet fierceness I had never seen before. She guarded him not just with her arms, but with her eyes, her ears, her instincts. Every stranger who passed our gate earned a second look. Every knock at the door made her pause. My father built a cradle from scrap wood, sanding it smooth until his hands bled. He never said much about Samuel, but sometimes I caught him watching the baby sleep, his face soft in a way I rarely saw. As for me, I became a second mother before I understood what that meant. I learned how to warm milk, how to hush cries, how to rock a child back from the edge of fear. At night, Samuel slept between Mama and Papa like a living secret neither of them dared let go. We never spoke Emily's name out loud, not once. Mama said names had power, and that some power was better left sleeping. Word traveled fast in small towns. People whispered when Mama didn't mourn publicly. They noticed the cross under the dogwood tree and offered their quiet condolences. "I'm sorry for your loss," they'd say. Mama would nod, eyes lowered, hands folded tight. I hated the lie, but I understood it. Samuel grew fast, strong legs, curious eyes. He laughed loudly, fearless, like the world had never tried to break him. And yet sometimes Mama would stare at him with an ache in her face that made my chest hurt. He didn't look like us. His hair was darker, his skin smoother. His eyes held a sharp intelligence that felt almost too big for a child. "People will notice," my father warned once. "They already do," Mama replied. When Samuel was 3, a well-dressed man rode into town. His boots were polished, his coat clean, too clean. He asked questions, casual ones. "Any babies born around here recently?" Mama's hands didn't shake. "Plenty die before they ever draw breath," she said calmly. The man tipped his hat and left. That night, Mama didn't sleep. She packed a small bag and hid it under the floorboards, just in case. Years passed. The cross stayed. The lie hardened. Samuel learned to walk, then to run. He called Mama Ma and my father Pa. He followed me everywhere, tugging at my skirt, laughing like joy was his birthright. And still, fear lived with us. Every unfamiliar face carried a question. Every distant horse made my heart race. Mama taught Samuel kindness, humility, silence when needed. "Some things aren't meant for telling," she'd say, brushing his hair back. I learned that love could be loud in action and quiet in truth. And yet secrets grow restless with age. I was 12 when I first understood that what we were doing had a cost, a real one. Not just fear, but consequences waiting patiently for their turn. because no matter how deeply you bury a secret, the earth remembers, and sooner or later, something always comes looking. I was nearly 15 when the past finally found us. It came not with thunder or shouting, but with the slow, steady sound of hooves on dirt. I remember it clearly because Mama dropped the bowl she was holding. It shattered on the floor, milk spreading like a white stain she didn't bother to clean. "There," she whispered. "Do you hear that?" I did. 2 horses, not locals, too careful, too deliberate. My father stepped to the window, peering out with a face that had aged 10 years in a heartbeat. "Take Samuel to the back," he said to me. "Now." Samuel was playing with a wooden toy Pa had carved for him. He looked up, confused. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said, forcing a smile as I grabbed his hand. "We're just going to play a quiet game." Mama straightened her dress, wiped her hands, and opened the door before they could knock. 2 men stood there, both dressed well, coats pressed, hats pulled low. One smiled, the other didn't bother. "Afternoon," the smiling one said. "We're looking for information." Mama folded her arms. "You won't find it here." The man chuckled. "You don't even know what we're asking. People like you only ask one thing, and the answer is no." The second man's eyes narrowed. "A woman passed through this area years ago, pregnant. We believe she gave birth nearby." Mama didn't blink. "Many women pass through. Many give birth. Many bury their dead." I watched from the hallway as they glanced past her, scanning the room. "Mind if we come in?" the smiling one asked. "Yes," Mama said simply. That answer landed like a slap. The men exchanged a look. "We can make this difficult," the second one warned. Mama leaned forward, her voice low. "You already have." Behind me, Samuel shifted. He was tall for his age now, strong, too noticeable. The smiling man's eyes caught movement. "Who's that?" he asked. My blood turned cold. "My nephew," Mama said quickly. "His parents died." The lie slid out smooth, but not smooth enough. The man studied Samuel, long, hard. "That boy has his father's eyes," he said quietly. The second man stiffened. Mama stepped between them and Samuel. "You're done here." The smiling man removed his hat. "Ma'am, we're not here to hurt anyone. We just want what belongs to us." Samuel looked up at Mama. "Ma," she rested her hand on his shoulder, firm, protective. "Go outside, Samuel." He hesitated. "Now," she said. He obeyed. The men watched him go. "That child is worth a fortune," the second man said flatly. "You've been hiding him for powerful people. You won't win this." Mama smiled then. It was small, tired, and fearless. "I already did," she said. My father appeared beside her, holding his hammer like a weapon. The smiling man sighed. "We'll be back." After they left, the house collapsed into silence. Mama sank into a chair. "Pack," she said. "We don't have much time." I understood then. Love had reached its limit, and sacrifice was coming next.
Mama moved through the cabin like she already knew what would be left behind. She folded clothes slowly, deliberately, as if each piece deserved a proper goodbye. My father gathered what little money we had, hiding it inside his boots. I stood frozen for a moment, watching Samuel sit on the bed, his face tight with confusion. "Are we moving?" he asked. "Yes," Mama said gently. "Just for a while." That was another lie, but one made from mercy. By sundown, the sky had turned the color of bruised peaches. The air felt wrong, heavy, waiting. My father hitched the old wagon, though it hadn't been used in years.
The wheels complained loudly, and every sound felt too big, too noticeable. Mama packed only what we could carry. Everything else, our table, our chairs, the cradle, was left behind, like a life already finished. Before we left, Mama walked to the dogwood tree. I followed her. She knelt in the dirt and touched the wooden cross, her fingers lingering on the rough grain. Her lips moved silently, a prayer maybe, or forgiveness. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I tried to keep you safe." I didn't know who she meant. We left under cover of darkness, taking the long route through the woods. Samuel sat beside me in the wagon, clutching my hand. He didn't cry. That scared me more than if he had. Hours passed. Then the sound came again. Horses. Closer this time. My father cursed under his breath and pushed the mule harder. Branches snapped. The wagon jolted. Samuel stumbled, and Mama pulled him into her arms, shielding him with her body. Lights appeared behind us, lanterns swinging, voices calling out. "There!" someone shouted. Panic surged through me like fire. Mama turned to my father. "Stop." He looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "They'll take him." "They won't," she said softly. "Not if I don't let them." Before I could understand, Mama lifted Samuel from the wagon and handed him to me. "Run," she whispered. "Take him east. Don't look back." "No, Mama, no!" I cried. She cupped my face, her eyes steady. "Listen to me, Sadie. You are strong. You always have been. Protect him." Then she stepped down from the wagon. The men caught up quickly. Lantern lights spilled over her, turning her into a shadow against the trees. "She's alone," one of them said. My father tried to jump down, but Mama raised her hand. "If you love him," she said firmly, "you'll stay." The men dismounted. "We know the boy's with you," one said. "Hand him over." "There was a boy," Mama replied. "He's dead, buried under that cross you've already seen." They laughed. "You expect us to believe that?" Mama straightened. "I don't need you to believe me. You just have to leave." One man stepped closer. "Move." Mama didn't. What happened next lives in pieces inside my memory. Raised voices, a struggle, my father shouting my name from far away. Then silence. I ran until my legs gave out. Samuel's breath was hot against my neck, his arms tight around me. Behind us, the woods swallowed the sound of everything we lost. That night, my mother chose to become a ghost so that Samuel could stay alive. And I learned that love doesn't always survive. Sometimes it sacrifices itself.